As many of you know, I grew up in Ontario and Christmases were always special to our family. We had many traditions and I loved every one of them. I loved the many family get-togethers, particularly the ones when we started hosting in our house, in our dining room, when there was 40 to 50 people seated in our dining room. I loved decorating sugar cookies with my grandma. I loved making the special treats, sharing them with our guests. I got to decorate all the trays every year, and of course, eating them. I loved playing games and going snowmobiling. I think I thought that Christmas would always look like it did back then. The first year I didn't get to go home for Christmas was a difficult one. In my youthfulness, I thought if I didn't even try to celebrate it, then I wouldn't miss it at all. I spent those first few days of the Christmas holidays at a friend's house while she was out of town, so I didn't have to wake up in an empty dorm, which just seemed so sad and lonely. As a college student, I was a little hard up for money, so I decided I would work on Christmas Eve instead of going to anyone else's home. I wanted to isolate myself in order to protect myself from feeling the loss of being home for Christmas. That first Christmas morning apart from my family dawned, and it was as bad as I imagined. No amount of pretending that it wasn't really Christmas Day worked. I turned on the television and the Disney parade was on. I turned to another channel and another Christmas show was playing, painfully reminding me of what I was missing. Later that day, I joined a friend to celebrate with them. But the Charlie Brown Christmas tree that they had decided to put up that year did nothing to alleviate the ache which I felt inside. The ache for home, the need to be welcomed back to the place I belonged, and the celebrations of the holidays in a place that I knew and loved. There is really nothing that connects us to a sense of home and belonging like our traditions. As a human beings, we have a connection with place. There are those spaces which we connect with that are safe for us. There are those places where we find comfort. They give us a sense of belonging and an identity. These places we call home, and these traditions we call ours. But the reality is that those places don't last forever, and the sense of home we remember from our childhood grows, and our traditions change throughout the years, while we are pretty unaware that it is even happening. And we change as well. Time moves on, we grow up, and our family changes with every new year that arrives. Many get married and carve out a new home and belonging of their own choosing. But even that doesn't stay the same. That family that begins as a couple becomes a larger family as babies are born, or not. But those children don't stay babies forever. Those children themselves grow up and move away, ready to chart their own course and forge their own home in the midst of this world. We ourselves grow older and are not necessarily able to stay in our homes when our physical abilities diminish. The march of time changes everything without us even always realizing it. I wonder if this resonates for many of us this year as Christmas is on the horizon and it will not look as our hearts remember. As we look forward to small, intimate gatherings of only those in our private households and of virtual celebrations with those outside of our households, we wonder if there is anything to celebrate. In this reading from Samuel, we see David himself looking for an idealized rendition of faith in God. Perhaps he looked at his neighbors, the neighboring religions, and looked at with envy on their elaborate places of worship. Perhaps he yearned for the day when he felt God's presence so palpably when he was a little kid in the shepherding those sheep, not shepherds. And he was looking to recreate it by building a monument in stone. Whatever his motive, in this text, we see God reject what David thinks is essential. God wakes the prophet Nathan up in the middle of the night to tell David that will not be up to him to build him a temple. God reminds them both that God doesn't need a home made out of brick and mortar. Rather, God makes a home in God's people. God makes a home in us, giving us a sense of belonging that transcends place and time, that transcends family traditions and cultural expectations, heaven and earth, life and death, COVID restrictions, and virtual networks. God makes a home in us, and that means we can depend on something greater than on our house and home, than the buildings and spaces where we live and work and worship. That means that we can depend on God wherever we are and whatever happens. We can depend upon God's presence in our virtual gatherings, in the belting out of silent night on our doorsteps and balconies, and in our connection with one another through phone calls, and in outdoor socially distant visits. God made a home in the Israelites as they traveled from the land of slavery to the land flowing of milk and honey. And I'm sure it wasn't easy on those times of celebration. And God made a home in Mary, in her womb. And through Christ, God makes his home in you and me. And when God makes his home in you and me, it sustains us and gives us hope, even as time changes all those things that we consider near and dear to us, including those Christmas traditions. Martin Luther says it well in the hymn that we love to sing on Reformation Sunday, but maybe we don't always hear the extent of what he's trying to say. Were they to take our house, goods, honor, child, or spouse, though life be wrenched away, they cannot win the day. The kingdom's ours forever. The kingdom is ours forever because God has made you and me his home through Jesus Christ. Wherever we are and whatever our circumstances, God is with us, making a home in us. And when God makes a home in us, it gives us a sense of belonging that exceeds that found in buildings or in our traditions. God is with us and we are home. Thanks be to God.